June 27, 1940. Brooklyn, New York. A 55-ton plate of steel descends slowly, guided by cables as thick as a man's arm. This is the first piece of a puzzle that will take 3 years to complete. Around it, the New York Navy Yard echoes with the sound of hammers and voices, the industrial symphony of a nation preparing for a war it doesn't yet know is coming. This is the keel of BB-61, the future USS Iowa. Meanwhile, in an office in Lower Manhattan, a man studies blueprints spread across a massive table. His hands are stained with ink as he traces lines representing armor plate 13 inches thick, propeller shafts as long as a city block, and engines powerful enough to drive 45,000 tons of steel through the ocean at 33 knots. This is William Francis Gibbs. He doesn't look like a revolutionary. He wears a tailored suit and speaks with the measured tone of Philadelphia high society. But his colleagues know the truth. They've heard the sailors' curses that erupt when designs aren't perfect. They've seen him fire security guards for failing to check his own ID. They know that this man, who never even earned an engineering degree, is about to transform American shipbuilding for a second time. What Gibbs doesn't know is that his role in designing the Iowa-class battleships will be just the beginning. The ship will fight across the Pacific, carry presidents, and witness the surrender that ends a world war. But this story isn't just about the ship. It's about the impossible man who helped dream her into existence, and then spent his life chasing a perfection that was always just out of reach. Our story begins in Philadelphia, 1894. William Francis Gibbs is just 8 years old when his father, a self-made millionaire, takes him to the cramped shipyard. They're there to watch the launch of the ocean liner St. Louis, the largest and fastest American-built passenger ship of her time. As the massive hull slides down the ways and hits the water with a roar, young Gibbs feels it in his chest. Years later, he would say, "From that day forward, I dedicated my life to ships." His father was not pleased. He hadn't built a fortune just so his son could waste time on maritime fantasies. He told young William that engineers were impractical dreamers. The law, that was where a real man made his mark. But it was too late. Every summer, William and his younger brother Frederick would sit on the beach, sketching ships, debating propulsion systems, and designing vessels that existed only in their imaginations, ships bigger, faster, and more powerful than anything on the seas. At night, William secretly read engineering journals. Years later, despite terrible grades, he gets into Harvard, thanks to his father's money. But he struggles. He's terrified of mathematics, a crippling weakness for an aspiring ship designer. He fails his engineering courses and eventually withdraws. Soon after, his father's fortune collapses. Bankruptcy, humiliation. The family money is gone. Gibbs puts himself through Columbia, graduates with a law degree as his father wished, wins his first case. Then he quits, because he and his brother had been working on something truly insane. By 1916, their workroom is covered in plans for an extraordinary ship, 1,000 feet long, with 180,000 horsepower, designed to be the fastest superliner in the world. There was just one problem. Neither brother had any formal training as a naval architect. No shipyard would take them seriously, so they took a huge risk. They secured a meeting with J.P. Morgan, Jr., one of the most powerful men in America. They brought their plans, their calculations, and their absolute certainty that they could build something the world had never seen. Morgan, impressed, studied the designs. He grilled them on weight, stability, and structural integrity. And the Gibbs brothers had an answer for everything, backed by mathematics they had taught themselves. Morgan agreed to finance the project. But then, on April 6, 1917, the United States entered World War I. The dream was put on hold. Steel was needed for destroyers, not superliners. But William Francis Gibbs never wasted an opportunity. When the German superliner Vaterland was seized in New York, Gibbs was put in charge of converting it into the troopship USS Leviathan. The shipbuilders wanted over $1 million just for the original plans. Gibbs refused. Instead, he assembled a team of draftsmen to measure every inch of the ship. They reverse-engineered one of the largest vessels afloat. When asked how he could remember such intricate details, Gibbs recited technical specifications from memory for 3.5 hours straight. The new Leviathan became his calling card. In 1922, Gibbs Brothers, Inc. opened for business. Their reputation grew with every new ship they designed. Then, in May 1927, disaster struck. The SS Malolo, one of their new ocean liners, was rammed by a freighter during sea trials. The collision tore a massive gash in her hull. Any conventional ship would have sunk. But the Malolo stayed afloat. Gibbs's obsessive focus on safety, with redundant systems and compartmentalization, had worked. The near disaster became the best advertising he could have ever hoped for. Suddenly, everyone wanted a Gibbs design. The firm expanded, becoming Gibbs & Cox, and began designing destroyers for the U.S. Navy. Their Mahan-class destroyers, with revolutionary high-pressure steam turbines, proved they could handle military contracts. By the late 1930s, Gibbs was designing everything from yachts to warships. But the dream of that 1,000-foot superliner remained. And then, in 1938, the Navy asked for his help. Washington, D.C., March 1938. The Battleship Design Advisory Board convenes. War seems inevitable. The old naval treaties are collapsing, and intelligence suggests Japan is building massive new battleships. The U.S. Navy now has an extra 10,000 tons to work with for its next generation of battleships. The question is, how to use it. Two schools of thought emerged. One side wanted a slow battleship, maximum armor, maximum firepower, a floating fortress. The other side wanted a fast battleship capable of 33 knots, able to keep pace with aircraft carriers and run down enemy cruisers. William Francis Gibbs was on that advisory board. He, along with other visionaries, argued for speed. They presented the numbers to prove that a fast, well-balanced, and heavily armed battleship was not just a theory, it was practical. The board's recommendation was clear. A 33-knot fast battleship was achievable. The General Board of the Navy accepted the concept. The Iowa class was born. In the late 1930s, as the world teetered on the edge of war, American naval engineers embarked on one of the most ambitious projects in their history. Their mission was to build a new class of battleship, one that was faster, stronger, and more technologically advanced than anything that had ever sailed the seas. This is the story of how that vision became a reality, giving birth to the legendary Iowa class. The first great challenge was speed. The goal was to move a colossal 45,000-ton vessel at over 33 knots, a speed previously unheard of for a ship of its size. This required an entirely new hull design, long, narrow, and exceptionally stable. But there was a critical constraint. The ship had to be no wider than 108 feet to pass through the Panama Canal, a vital strategic waterway. After countless calculations, the engineers settled on a waterline length of 860 feet. This made the Iowa class longer than any American battleship before it, setting a new standard in naval architecture. Next came the question of firepower. Should the new ships carry the same 16-inch guns as the preceding South Dakota class, or should they be fitted with a newer, powerful version? The newer gun offered superior range and hitting power, but its extra weight threatened to push the design over the limits set by international naval treaties. The project hit a major snag when two different Navy bureaus realized they had been working from mismatched designs. For a moment, it seemed like the entire program was in jeopardy. But crisis often breeds innovation. In a brilliant feat of engineering, a redesigned 16-inch gun, the Mark VII, was developed. It was lighter than the original proposal, but still delivered the incredible performance the Navy demanded. This gun would go on to become one of the most respected pieces of naval artillery of its era, a perfect balance of power and precision. With the main armament settled, the final design was approved in July 1940. President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the construction of 4 ships: Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, and Wisconsin. Each vessel represented a massive national investment, a clear signal of America's commitment to naval superiority. On June 27, 1940, at the New York Navy Yard, the story of USS Iowa truly began. There were no grand ceremonies or public speeches. Instead, skilled shipbuilders quietly guided the first steel plate of the keel into position. It was a humble, yet profoundly significant moment, the start of an icon. Work on the massive hull continued around the clock. Thousands of workers, a diverse army of welders, riveters, and engineers, swarmed the dry dock day and night. Beneath its armored skin, the Iowa was a marvel of modern technology. Its heart was an advanced power plant, consisting of 8 massive boilers and 4 powerful turbines, capable of generating over 200,000 horsepower. This immense power was what gave the ship its record-breaking speed. But speed without survivability meant little. Influenced by the genius naval architect William Francis Gibbs, the ship's interior was divided into a complex web of watertight compartments. This compartmentalized design meant the ship could sustain significant damage in one area and still remain operational. It was a revolutionary approach to safety, ensuring the Iowa was not just fast and powerful, but also incredibly resilient. 2 years of relentless effort culminated on August 27, 1942. On that day, the massive gray hull of the USS Iowa slid down the slipway and into the waters of the East River for the first time. Mrs. Henry A. Wallace, the wife of the vice president, christened the new warship, officially giving it its name. The launch was more than just a milestone in construction. It was a celebration of the thousands of American hands and minds that had brought the ship to life. But the work was far from over. Throughout the rest of 1942 and into early 1943, teams of specialists swarmed the ship, fitting it out with its complex nervous system. They installed miles of electrical wiring, sophisticated radar and communication systems, and the intricate instruments needed to control its guns and engines. Every single component had to be perfect. Finally, on February 22, 1943, USS Iowa was officially commissioned into the United States Navy under the command of Captain John L. McCrea. The fastest, most powerful battleship ever built by the United States was ready for duty. Later that year, the brand new ship was given a unique and top-secret mission. President Roosevelt needed to travel to Tehran for a critical conference with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin. Due to the president's health, air travel was too risky. The Navy was tasked with providing the safest and most reliable transportation possible, and their choice was clear: the USS Iowa. The ship was quickly modified for its VIP passenger. A special bathtub was installed in the captain's quarters to accommodate the president, and the admiral's cabin was converted into a suite for his diplomatic and military staff. In November 1943, USS Iowa slipped out of Hampton Roads, Virginia, carrying the commander-in-chief across the treacherous Atlantic. The journey was a resounding success, showcasing the ship's incredible speed, stability, and reliability under real-world conditions. After safely delivering the president, the Iowa continued its service, first in the Atlantic and then in the Pacific, where it would write its name into the history books during the final decisive campaigns of World War II. What began as a set of ambitious drawings in a design office had become a living, breathing symbol of American industrial might and engineering genius. The creation of the USS Iowa wasn't just a triumph of technology. It was a testament to the vision, collaboration, and unwavering spirit of an entire generation. In January 1944, the USS Iowa passed through the Panama Canal, leaving the Atlantic behind and reporting for duty with the Pacific Fleet. The war in the Pacific was a different beast altogether. The distances were immense, and naval warfare was now dominated by fast carrier task forces. These forces needed escorts that could keep up with 30-knot carriers, providing a formidable screen of anti-aircraft fire and heavy gunfire support. The older North Carolina and South Dakota-class battleships were just too slow. They couldn't hold formation during high-speed strikes, but the Iowas could. Iowa joined Task Force 58, her first taste of action coming in the Marshall Islands campaign. From late January to early February 1944, she screened carriers launching strikes against Kwajalein and Eniwetok. When Japanese planes dared to approach the American fleet, her 5-inch and 40mm guns threw up a blistering curtain of steel, protecting the vital carriers. But her primary role was not what many had envisioned. While her 9 16-inch guns could obliterate shore defenses and dominate any surface ship, Iowa spent most of 1944 as a floating fortress, a bodyguard for the aircraft carriers, the true striking power of the fleet. It wasn't the glamorous ship-to-ship duels of naval legend, but it was absolutely essential. In mid-February, Iowa got a chance to stretch her legs. During an anti-shipping sweep around the massive Japanese naval base at Truk, she raced through the waves, hunting for enemy vessels trying to escape the American onslaught. This was what she was built for: raw speed and overwhelming firepower, designed to run down and destroy anything that crossed her path. Throughout 1944, Iowa fought her way across the Pacific, supporting strikes on Saipan and Tinian, and participating in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, famously known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Then came Leyte Gulf in October 1944, the largest naval battle in history. Iowa was part of Admiral Halsey's Task Force 38. When a Japanese carrier force was spotted to the north, Halsey took the bait, leading his powerful fleet, including Iowa, in pursuit. Strategically, it was a mistake. The carriers were a decoy. The real threat, Admiral Kurita's center force with the super battleship Yamato, was steaming towards the vulnerable American invasion beaches. What followed was the heroic, desperate battle off Samar. A small group of American escort carriers and destroyers found themselves standing between Kurita's behemoths and the defenseless transports. They fought with incredible courage, buying just enough time for Kurita to become confused and withdraw under air attack. But the cost was terrible. Halsey was heavily criticized. If he had left the fast battleships to guard the beaches, Iowa might have had its legendary duel with Yamato. But it was not to be. After an overhaul in early 1945, Iowa returned to the fight just in time for the final campaigns. At Okinawa, she once again provided gunfire support and screened the carriers. Then, in July 1945, she did something truly unprecedented. She bombarded the Japanese home islands directly. Her 16-inch guns pounded industrial targets in Kamaishi and Hitachi, a powerful symbol of Japan's imminent defeat. An American battleship sitting just off their coast was a psychological blow from which there was no recovery. On September 2, 1945, Iowa sat at anchor in Tokyo Bay, a steel witness as her sister ship, the Missouri, hosted the formal surrender ceremony, officially ending World War II. She had earned 9 battle stars and served her country with distinction. Her story should have been ending. Instead, it was just getting started. While the Iowa-class battleships faced an uncertain peacetime future, their designer, William Francis Gibbs, was busy chasing a lifelong dream: the ultimate superliner. During the war, his firm, Gibbs & Cox, had designed the majority of America's naval and merchant vessels. But Gibbs was obsessed with creating a ship that was unsinkable, unburnable, and uncatchable. In 1946, he got his chance. United States Lines authorized him to design a new superliner, subsidized by the Navy, which could be converted into a troop ship. The result was the SS United States. At 990 feet, she was longer than the Iowa. Her superstructure was made of aluminum, a testament to Gibbs's paranoia about fire. The only wood allowed was in the pianos. Her power plant was a state secret, but it generated a staggering 240,000 horsepower, more than any passenger ship ever built. On her maiden voyage in July 1952, she shattered the transatlantic speed record, capturing the coveted blue riband. With a top speed approaching 40 knots, she was the fastest ocean liner ever built, a record that stands to this day. Gibbs had his masterpiece. But while the SS United States was a civilian triumph, the Iowa-class battleships were something different. They were instruments of war, and their service was far from over. Just as the SS United States was claiming her records, the Korean War was raging. The Navy needed firepower, and in August 1951, the Iowa was brought out of mothballs. By April 1952, she was off the coast of Korea, her massive guns providing devastatingly effective fire support for UN troops. Each of her shells, weighing as much as a small car, could obliterate bridges, rail yards, and enemy positions from miles away. The North Koreans and Chinese had no answer to her power. After Korea, Iowa served in the Atlantic, participating in NATO exercises and representing American naval might. But in 1958, she was decommissioned for a second time, joining the reserve fleet. For 26 years, she sat silent, slowly deteriorating. It seemed her time had finally passed. Then came the 1980s and President Reagan's 600-ship Navy initiative. The world was about to see that battleships still had a role to play. In April 1984, for the third time, USS Iowa was recommissioned. She was back. But this new chapter would be marked by tragedy. On April 19, 1989, during a live fire exercise in the Caribbean, a massive explosion ripped through her No. 2 turret. The blast was catastrophic, instantly killing 47 sailors. The exact cause became a subject of intense debate for years. The Navy's initial claims of sabotage were widely disputed, and later investigations pointed toward a tragic accident, a combination of aging propellant, faulty equipment, and human error. Turret 2 was sealed, becoming a permanent memorial to the men who lost their lives. Despite the tragedy, Iowa completed her deployment. But the world was changing. The Cold War was ending, and the strategic need for battleships was evaporating. On October 26, 1990, the USS Iowa was decommissioned for the final time. For over 2 decades, she sat rusting in the reserve fleet at Suisun Bay, California. The age of the battleship was truly over. But Iowa's story has one more chapter. She was not destined for the scrapyard. Today, she serves as a museum ship at the port of Los Angeles. She is a monument to the sailors who served on her, a testament to American industrial power, and a preserved piece of history. The fastest, most powerful battleship ever built now rests peacefully, her guns silent, her legacy secured. On September 6, 1967, in New York City, William Francis Gibbs passed away, just 2 weeks after his 81st birthday. He never saw his beloved ship, the SS United States, taken out of service. That would happen 2 years later, in 1969. The vessel he obsessed over, the one that embodied everything he believed about design, safety, and American engineering, had become uneconomical in the new jet age. But the day after Gibbs died, something truly remarkable happened. As the SS United States sailed past his lower Manhattan office on her way out to sea, the ship's whistle sounded. Long, mournful blasts echoed across the harbor. It was a salute to the man who created her. The crew, however, had no idea that Gibbs had passed away. The timing was pure coincidence. Yet for those who witnessed it, colleagues and family members standing on the street below his now empty office, it felt like something more. A final farewell. A recognition that the ship and her creator were never really separate entities. The obsession that drove Gibbs for 50 years was inscribed in every rivet, every weld, every perfectly calculated line of his masterpiece. Gibbs left behind a legacy that stretched far beyond the SS United States. His firm, Gibbs & Cox, continued to design ships for decades. The Iowa-class battleships he helped conceive would remain in service for generations. Hundreds of merchant vessels bore his design stamp. The modern American maritime industry, which he helped rebuild from almost nothing after World War I, owes much of its technical foundation to his relentless innovation. But more than ships, Gibbs left behind a philosophy. Perfection is achievable. Safety is paramount. Every single detail matters. Wood burns. Eliminate it. Compartmentalization saves lives. Maximize it. Speed isn't a luxury. It's survival. These principles, encoded in everything from destroyers to ocean liners, represented a worldview where engineering wasn't just about solving problems, but about creating order from chaos and beauty from mathematics. His obituaries noted his achievements, cataloging the hundreds of ships his firm designed. But they missed something essential. William Francis Gibbs never saw himself as successful. He saw himself as almost there, almost perfect, always ready for the next challenge. The man who revolutionized American shipbuilding remained until his very last day. That young boy on the beach at Spring Lake, sketching impossible vessels and dreaming of a greatness just beyond his reach. Fast forward to July 7, 2012, in Los Angeles, California. The USS Iowa opens as a museum ship. She's moored at the port of Los Angeles in San Pedro, not far from where she was decommissioned 22 years earlier. The journey from a mothballed warship to a public attraction took years of effort and millions of dollars, raised by the non-profit Pacific Battleship Center. Today, visitors walk her teak decks. They tour her compartments. They stand in the very room where Franklin Roosevelt slept during his 1943 transatlantic crossing. They see Turret 2, still bearing the scars of the 1989 explosion, now a solemn memorial to the 47 men who lost their lives there. The Iowa is one of the last surviving battleships in the world. Her sister ships tell similar stories. The New Jersey is a museum in Camden, across the Delaware River from Philadelphia, not far from where a young William Gibbs watched the SS St. Louis launch in 1894. The Missouri rests in Pearl Harbor, overlooking the spot where the Pacific War began. Her deck's the site where it officially ended. And the Wisconsin is in Norfolk, Virginia, alongside other historic warships. Together, the 4 Iowa-class battleships represent the pinnacle of a dead art. No nation builds battleships anymore. No nation ever will again. The unique combination of circumstances that made them possible, the technology, the tactics, the industrial capacity, has passed into history. Modern warships carry missiles, not 16-inch guns. They rely on electronics, not armor plate. They're designed for flexibility and stealth, not for brutal slugging matches at 20-mile ranges. But the Iowas endure as monuments to what was once possible. When they were designed in the late 1930s, they represented the absolute state of the art. They were the culmination of expert recommendations, detailed engineering from the Bureau of Construction and Repair, revolutionary guns from the Bureau of Ordnance, and the incredible skill of shipyard workers. All of it came together to create vessels that combined speed, firepower, and protection in a way never before achieved. And they worked. The Iowa carried a president across submarine-infested waters. She screened aircraft carriers across the vast Pacific. She survived kamikaze attacks, typhoons, and decades of neglect in the reserve fleet. Reactivated twice, she served in 3 different wars, remaining a potent symbol of American naval power until the very end of the battleship era. The ship William Francis Gibbs helped envision outlived him by 45 years, and counting. Today, in 2024, the USS Iowa sits in Los Angeles, weathering slowly. Museum ships face challenges that active warships don't. There's no round-the-clock crew for maintenance, no shipyard overhauls every few years. Funding is a perpetual struggle. Volunteers do their best, but they can't replace professional sailors. Systems fail. Paint peels. Rust, the eternal enemy, always returns. The Iowa-class battleships are all more than 80 years old now. The steel that seemed eternal when they were launched is finally showing its age. Preserving these giants is expensive, difficult, and sometimes feels futile. But then, you walk Iowa's main deck and look forward along her nearly 900-foot length. You see the massive turrets, each capable of throwing shells weighing as much as a car across 20 miles. You look up at the superstructure, bristling with radar antennas and fire control directors. You think about the men who built her, laboring around the clock at the New York Navy Yard to turn drawings into reality. You think about the sailors who served aboard her, in the Atlantic, at Leyte Gulf, off the coasts of Korea and the Persian Gulf. And you remember the 47 who died in Turret 2. And you think about the man who helped dream her into existence. William Francis Gibbs never claimed to be the sole designer of the Iowa class. He was too honest for that. He knew major warships are collaborative efforts, the product of committees, bureaus, and hundreds of engineers. His role on the design advisory board was influential, but not solely decisive. But Gibbs brought something essential to that process: a vision of what American ships could be, an insistence on innovation over tradition, a core belief that speed and survivability could coexist with overwhelming firepower. The same philosophy that led him to design the liner Malolo with compartmentalization so advanced it saved her from sinking after a collision. That same philosophy echoed through the Iowa's internal subdivision and damage control systems. His fingerprints, if not his signature, are all over the Iowa-class design. Let's return to the beginning. June 27, 1940. The keel plate of the USS Iowa descends into place at the New York Navy Yard. Somewhere in Lower Manhattan, William Francis Gibbs is studying blueprints. He doesn't know about the torpedo incident that will happen 3 years later. He doesn't know about Leyte Gulf or Okinawa. He doesn't know this ship will become one of the longest-serving warships in American history. All he knows is that America is building something unprecedented. 33-knot fast battleships. Ships that can run down any enemy, survive any engagement, and dominate any battle. The advisory board's work on the battleships is done, but Gibbs is already thinking about his next obsession, the 1,000-foot superliner that would become the SS United States. He doesn't know yet that his greatest achievement isn't a single ship. It's a philosophy, a standard, an understanding that engineering isn't just about making things work, it's about making them work perfectly, safely, and beautifully. It's knowing that every choice matters because lives depend on it. That philosophy is in the Iowa, in her long, fast hull, in her subdivided machinery spaces and redundant power plants, in her carefully calculated armor scheme. It's in every aspect of her design that prioritizes survival and performance over cost and simplicity. It's why she lasted 80 years. It's why she's still here. The keel plate settles into position, the first step in a journey that will span oceans, decades, and 3 separate commissions into service. A journey that begins with an obsessive naval architect's influence and continues long after his death, into an era where Iowa serves as a memorial, a reminder of what we can build when we refuse to accept limits. When we look at a problem, like making a 45,000-ton steel ship move at 33 knots while carrying impossible armor and guns, and refuse to believe it can't be done. The advisory board said it was possible. The bureaus made it real. The shipyards built it. The sailors proved it. The steel doesn't remember William Francis Gibbs. Steel doesn't remember anything, but we do. We remember the man who saw opportunity in the impossible, who transformed an industry through sheer force of will. We remember because the ship is still here, and as long as the Iowa floats, as long as visitors walk her decks and stand in awe before her 16-inch guns, the obsession of William Francis Gibbs endures. Not in wood, which burns, but in steel, which lasts.